The accidental announcement of the Super Mario Bros. Movie sequel's title of Super Mario World throws up a few possible consequences worth considering. Essentially, the corporation behind the Super Mario Bros. Movie sequel had accidentally, in a document to advertisers, tipped the name of the second movie as being called Super Mario World, and this leak has obviously caused a great deal of interest. Now, this certainly makes sense of the decision to title Mario Kart as Mario Kart World, as this is a much more recent and commercial tie-in than the 1990s classic, which will nevertheless have had huge audience resonance, particularly for fans of a certain age. In addition, it seems at least plausible, given the original movie's Mario Kart content, that there will be a direct tie-in to both world games in the process. This apparent decision to ensure that the titling of the games and the films overlaps is surely partly to do with conveying a sense of authenticity and faithfulness to the original titles, as well as creating synergy. Even in the 1990s, where every single Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon and comic adaptation had wildly different continuities, styles, and tones, Mario was, with the exception of one colossal failure of a film, more steady as she goes, with one animation that felt closer to the Mushroom Kingdom we all know, and very little in the way of comic adaptations. This was in part a response to Sega's own comfort with freestyling. UK Sonic the Comic writer Nigel Kitching once recounted how Sega were more sympathetic to his wish for creative freedom than the brand management company's wish to ruthlessly follow the existing form of the games. He recounted, "There was interference on Sonic the Comic, but it was pretty half-hearted most of the time. I remember one time the editorial staff and most of the creators attended a meeting with Sega and Copyright Promotions. Copyright Promotions were a company employed by Sega to police their property. So there we all were at the meeting, and I was next to the woman from Copyright Promotions, and she had a pile of Sonic the Comics with many pages bookmarked, obviously indicating numerous occasions of license crime. She was clearly waiting for her moment when she would produce this damning evidence and make herself look really professional into the bargain. I can't remember quite how it went, but the first chance I got, I put it to Sega that the comic was very popular, and we were trying to produce a good product, not a slavish version of the style guides or video game. The woman from Sega agreed, and I saw the woman from Copyright Promotions quietly slip her pile of comics out of sight under some papers." End quote. Suffice to say, I don't think Nintendo is like Sega in this regard. I would not expect to see a Mario as open to free interpretation as Sonic was, and therefore we can expect that the films will hew closer to the spirit of the games. Now, I don't expect visually there to be anything from the films returning to the games, but I do suspect that we can look to the films as hints for game titles and potentially even trajectories. The 2023 Mario movie accompanied a new Super Mario Bros. Game, the first in some time. The 2026 film will follow a new Super Mario World of sorts, although not the one we were expecting, Mario Kart World. Is there potential for further such tie-ins into 2029? After all, it stands to reason that a third film will target 2029, given the 3-year increments of not just the Mario movies to date, but the proposed Zelda trilogy. While another Mario-led entry would be the obvious further step, it does raise the prospect that another title such as Luigi's Mansion could be given the nod in this slot, and here the synchronicity of having a new Luigi's Mansion prior to the new game could be irresistible. While I think there are strong reasons for Luigi's Mansion to come this year, and in a recent video I gave some stock to the Luigi theorizing, I still think on balance that next level games would be better tasked with something far more massive in scope in a few years' time, and 2028 or 2029 might be perfect timing for a new Luigi's Mansion film. Alternatively, of course, we should consider the distinct possibility that other games in the Mario oeuvre will get the nod. Yoshi's Island is certainly a possibility, but I expect a fairly big push on Yoshi even as it stands, while Wario Land seems unlikely to come back, given the character's slightly satirical take on Mario, which possibly doesn't match their current objectives. I also don't think Dr. Mario is extraordinarily likely to lead the film, and Mario's sporting efforts probably can be ruled out also, as I don't think a Mario version of Wimbledon is on the cards in the near term. However, there is one sufficiently iconic Mario entry that does have scope for narrative expansion, and that is, of course, Super Mario Galaxy. So here's the thing. If the Super Mario Movie 3 is coming in 2029, then you would really expect Nintendo to have something galactic to capitalize on it. The nearest thing would be a new Mario 3D game, which we could expect surely no later than 2026, but this would be a fair way in advance of the third movie, and would a Galaxy 3 really capture the imagination of a new Switch 2 audience as a ground-up concept like Odyssey did on the Switch? I think they all want to feel new and different in what they're doing, not going back to a 20-year-old concept. Another option, which I've always thought must have some likelihood in this generation, is a revival of Super Mario Galaxy 2, a title that is simultaneously universally applauded for its brilliant gameplay mechanics and yet largely unrecognized, whose sales were relatively poor and whose legacy has been diminished by its exclusion from the 2020 Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. A Super Mario Galaxy 2 plus Bowser's Star Fury would allow them to bring the game into the present day and bolt content onto it, and I would think this was an obvious move, except that they so rarely have done this with Mario material. Yes, Super Mario 3D World got a bolt on, yes, Zelda games are always getting remastered, but graphics-only revisions of Mario games are really quite obscure. The Super Mario Advance games got away with it, and of course, Super Mario 64 DS did play around with the core concept of Mario 64, an established classic. Plus, you can argue that Super Mario All-Stars back on the Super NES was really one of the titles that started it all in terms of remastering classic Nintendo content. But Shigeru Miyamoto has always resisted this. Both Super Mario 64 and Super Mario Sunshine have come to Nintendo Classics without the same kind of attention that most Zelda games have had once, if not in the case of Link's Awakening, twice. Perhaps the idea of the games is sufficiently different for Mario titles of yore to finally get a new lease of life. Perhaps the Nintendo Switch 2 edition concept will inevitably drag 3D Mario into the remastering and plus game proceedings. And perhaps also a Super Mario Galaxy film in 2029 would make a 2029 mid-gen Super Mario Galaxy 2 game workable. Of course, it's possible in theory that if the team has expanded dramatically for the next 3D Mario, and that title is indeed targeting March of 2026, then a November 2029 title for a more course-based Super Mario Galaxy 3 could be created as an entirely new game. Still, the scale of that endeavour seems large, and it seems unlikely for Nintendo to shun the huge amount of existing goodwill that they have for Super Mario Galaxy 2, a game that they must realise has been undercooked in terms of its potential. Still, there are other options still for Super Mario revivals. Super Mario Sunshine, sadly, I fear, will remain in the rearview mirror for some time, but Super Mario Odyssey has a concept that would be suitably filmic and could certainly draw in both the galactic and terrestrial considerations of the Mario universe. A Super Mario Odyssey Plus game is a far lower hanging fruit for Nintendo in many respects, as unlike Super Mario Galaxy 2, the title is already on Switch and would simply need much belated DLC to be bolted on. And then there is another prospect, a prospect that is the boldest of all, which is that the next Super Mario game title will be the template game for the third movie. Think about it. The films have been in deep development for this decade, and Bowser's Fury was released in early 2021. There has been huge overlap now in terms of the game development time and the movies, and it would make an awful lot of sense for Nintendo to create something that at least has the potential to serve as a template for a future movie to ensure maximum synergy between their new Switch 2 Mario entry and their big new movie. Quite what that could be, I don't know. I have also raised the prospect previously that characters from the Mario and Luigi and Paper Mario games could potentially make the cut as the games seek to continue to expand the scope and scale of the Mario universe. Hooktail, for example, but I think these are far deeper cut characters and are a long way from where the film franchise currently is. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention Zelda. With Mario Kart World seeming such a perfect on ramp to the next movie, surely this only strengthens the case for a new Zelda Ocarina of Time game, it being the most iconic of all the recent Zelda stories. I mean, Link's Awakening is an absolute classic, but few, when they think of Zelda, think of Koholint Island and Marin. I mean, they should, and the idea of a Link's Awakening film is almost too magical to be believed, although with such potential to go wrong, I'm not sure I dare even wish for it. Either way, I could definitely see Zelda also benefiting from this kind of joined up thinking between the film and game universes going forward. Thank you so much for listening as ever. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.